Greetings, I'm David Goldwyn. I'm chairman of the Energy Advisory Group at the Atlantic Council's Global Energy Center. We're here at the Global Decarbonization Accelerator live at COP28. I'm joined this morning by Alisa Newman Hood, who is Executive Vice President and General Counsel for Excelerate Energy. And let's jump right in. Alisa, just tell me, what's the company doing here at COP28 and what do you hope will come out of it?
Great. Well, I will quote our former U.S. Energy Secretary Moniz, who I heard speak earlier at his fireside chat, and he spoke about pragmatism. So I think as a company, we are here to speak to the pragmatists, the people who see natural gas or role for natural gas in the energy transition. That's the business that Excelerate's in. We own a global fleet of FSRUs that can receive and regasify LNG from anywhere around the world. We've seen in Europe how that's been critical to European energy security. We've seen that in other markets where we offer service in South Asia, where natural gas is the cleaner alternative to coal and crude-based feedstock. So I think what we hope to see more of here, again, is that kind of pragmatic conversation, again, that recognizes the role that natural gas has to play in the all-important energy transition.
Terrific. There's a lot of conversation here about decarbonization of the value chain, decarbonization of natural gas. So obviously generate some emissions in the process of, converting gas into LNG and transporting it across. So how do you do decarbonization in your part of the industry?
Well, I would say the FSRU industry is really using a lot of the same and leveraging a lot of the same technologies that companies in other parts of the energy value chain are. So, for example, and I spoke a little bit to this on our panel this morning, satellite technology. So we have partnered with a satellite company that allows us to access data about operations on our vessels in real time so that we can optimize things like fuel consumption to use less of it, speed, routes, shipping routes, and voyages. So again, using, I think, technology that's been deployed throughout the energy industry and in other industries to optimize. Similarly, artificial intelligence. So again, we've partnered with an AI company specialized in the maritime space. So that's not real-time information gathering. That's looking across on a daily, monthly, annually basis at our global fleet and saying, okay, where can we pinpoint inefficiencies? And then how can we address those, all towards the goal of reducing our carbon emissions?
And so I guess there's been a lot of talk about sort of net zero emissions in the upstream industry. There was this great announcement of the oil and gas decarbonization charter. I mean, is net zero or near zero emissions possible in your part of the value chain?
I think reduction is definitely possible. I mean, the midstream comes in really all shapes and sizes. So, of course, you've got pipeline companies that transport oil and or natural gas. In our, I would say, Accelerate sort of little niche corner of the midstream industry, I think our contribution is frankly by growing our business to reduce emissions, because in most of the markets where we serve, the LNG that we provide governments and countries access to is always going to be the cleaner alternative to, again, to coal and crude-based feedstocks.
Great. Yeah, let's pick up on that point. There's a lot of conversation about the just transition. So in the global south, in Africa and other parts, South Asia in particular, where there's a lot of use of biomass, a lot of use of coal, for them, the just transition means the availability of gas as well as renewables in order to decarbonize their power sector, but get affordable energy. So can you talk a little bit about the places you operate and the way that gas fits into decarbonization in those markets?
Sure. Well, David, I have to say, I'm so glad that the Atlantic Council is really championing this part of the conversation. I think if we are going to really engage and draw and continue to draw developing countries, including in the markets where we serve, into this conversation on the energy transition, that in a meaningful way, that equality in the energy transition or a just transition has got to be part of the dialogue. So again, I think Atlantic Council is doing a lot of great work to sort of to push that conversation. So when I look at how we can, as a company, sort of contribute to that, we provide a very affordable and very quick way for developing countries and developed countries to access LNG internationally. So our FSRUs, by definition, are temporary. They can arrive, they can sail away. They are owned by us, meaning for the customer, that's almost no capital expenditure. It's a monthly or daily lease payment that is even for a developing country government is extremely affordable. Also, because we are not a fixed onshore infrastructure, we arrive and we're pretty much ready to go. We can measure our startup time and our lead time in months, really, rather than years. Lastly, I would say, looking at one particular market, Bangladesh, where we serve, and again, we are, as in so many markets, the cleaner alternative. We also have the advantage of having no onshore footprint. So Bangladesh is a country with the population of the United States in a land territory the size of California. They do not have much onshore territory to make available to things like wind farms or even onshore LNG infrastructure. So the fact that FSRUs can be moored offshore allows, again, a developing country like Bangladesh to have a de minimis onshore footprint and to access, as I said, global LNG.
Yeah, I think it's an unappreciated, or at least an underappreciated point, that people wonder, is gas a bridge or is it a destination? And, if we get to a world where we have major battery storage for intermittent renewables and you can run a whole country on those, then, your FSRU can be there to provide gas as transition. That transitional time might be a decade. But if they get to that point, or the technology gets to that point, you can move to another market. Absolutely. Just in closing, I think it would help to make this concrete. Can you just describe 2 or 3 of the markets where you operate and why gas is a just transition? You've mentioned Bangladesh, obviously, previously a heavily coal-dependent country, and also an area where there's enormous energy poverty. So you're addressing the energy poverty issue, also one of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as health issues. But just 2 or 3 examples to make it concrete for our audience about where you're delivering energy and why it's part of decarbonization in those places.
Sure. Well, an example that I've given before that you've heard me give is Brazil. So Brazil is, of course, a developed country, but I think it's instructive for developing countries, and particularly ones that have a lot of rainfall and might be considering hydropower as a relatively low-cost sort of renewable resource. So we have 2 FSRUs in Brazil. We've been there for over a decade. This is a country, I think, that's made a lot of early strides in terms of relying on a renewable source, hydropower. But in recent years, there was severe drought in Brazil, not much rainfall at all. And the government was able to rely on both pipeline gas that Brazil has from Bolivia and on Accelerate's 2 LNG import terminals, again, as a backstop to renewables. So I really think that's a good template for, including for developing countries who are looking perhaps towards hydropower. Another example I would give is in Pakistan. It's perhaps a similar story to Bangladesh. We provide about 25% of Pakistan's natural gas needs. That is a very clear-cut situation where we are just fully displacing coal, and really Chinese coal. So I think as a U.S. company, there's an energy security angle to it, as well as a development and carbon emissions reducing one.
Yeah, so reducing poverty, substituting for coal, backing up renewables. I think so it sounds like an important part of the just transition, an important part of decarbonization. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. Thank you and the audience for joining us. We're live from COP28, and if you found us, then you're already on our website, and there's much more content for you to explore. Thanks for joining us.